All right, guys, in our last video, we talked about the causes of World War II. Today, or in this video, we are going to talk about the European battles of um, World War II. So, World War II is fought a little bit differently than World War One. There's less trench fighting, and there's actually battles on in fronts, they call it, on many different parts of the world. There's the Pacific Front over by Japan. There's fighting in Africa, and there's fighting all over Europe. So when it's all said and done, they're fighting on about one half of the world's land area, which is crazy. Never before have we seen a war like that, and never since have we really seen a war that's that big. This is the biggest war in world history, for sure. Okay, so the two theaters, like I said, there's European theater, which has Germany and Italy versus the United States and Russia and Britain and France. So it's 4 against 2, but you'll see it's not always easy for those four going against the two. Okay, and then the Pacific theater is really just Japan versus the United States. But there are four fronts on the eastern, or there are four fronts total. Okay, we've got the Eastern Front, the Western Front, the Southern Europe and North African Front, and then the Pacific Front. And we're going to go through all four of those fronts here in our notes. A front just means that's where battles are happening. That's where people are fighting. Okay, that's all that a front means. All right, so the Western Front really starts in the summer of 1940. Italy invades France, forcing France to surrender, and Germany sets up their own puppet government in France. So Germany's kind of running the show, and France, which is a major country, is kind of done for right now. There's no French government. There's nothing like that. They're kind of the French people are trying to regroup and attack Germany again, but Germany takes Paris, the capital, and things like that, and sets up their own government. And then after the Italy invades France, Germany's like, we're going to invade we're going to invade Britain. And for about a year, there is what's called the Battle of Britain takes place, and Germany greatly outnumbers Britain. But they led a bombing siege on London for like 2 straight months, and London is the capital of Great Britain. So if the British were to lose London, their country would fall, and Germany would control France and Britain and Poland, Germany would control all of that, which is a massive land area. But Britain is able to hold their ground, and this is a major turning point in the war. Even though it's early on, them not giving up London is huge and is a major turning point for the Allied powers. Okay, so here's a map of kind of the war. So Germany in 1940 goes. I'm sorry, that is incorrect. I'm going to erase that quick. So Italy comes up into France in 1940 and invades France, and with the help of Germany conquers France and sets up their own government. At the same time, Germany is laying bombing raids on Britain up here and London, which is right on the edge here. Okay, so if Germany was able to get Britain, they would control this and this, as well as all of this territory that I am circling right here. Right, that would be all Germany, which would be massive and not good for the uh, for the Allied powers. So it was huge that Britain was able to hold off the Germans there. Okay, so I need to erase that. Okay, so here are some pictures from the Battle of Britain, and you can see just how much devastation took place within London, and just how bad it was for the people. Okay, and so it's really a devastating bombing raid for a few months there. Okay, so that's the Western Front. Now we have the Eastern Front. And the Eastern Front really begins in 1941, which is what's called Operation Barbarossa. And it's the largest military operation in world history. Over 10 million soldiers were used in just this one operation, and there were 5 million plus casualties, which is insane. And it was all built around this idea of this three-pronged attack by the Germans, right? The Germans control Poland now, so they're gonna invade Russia and try and attack Russia in three different spots in order to conquer that piece of Europe. Okay, and so the major part of Operation Barbarossa is the Battle of Stalingrad, and Hitler needs oil for his machines from Russia, so he wants to invade Stalingrad, which is down here in southern Russia, and the Germans do invade, but it's kind of a mistake for the Germans because they have some tactical errors, and the Soviets are able to push them out of Russia and the USSR for good. So they'll never again be in Russia trying to conquer them. Okay, but in that one battle alone, there was 2 million people dead or wounded. Okay, which is an insane number. Okay, I hope as we're going through this that you gain a sense of appreciation for the people that fought and the harsh things that they went through and how devastating this war really was. 2 million casualties in just one war or just one battle. I'm sorry. So that's Germans trying to push into Russia. Russia's able to hold them off, and that this causes them to join the war on the side of the Allies and fight with Britain and France because now Germany's their enemy for invading them. Okay, so again, we've got Operation Barbarossa is Germany here pushing from Poland into the Soviet Union and invading here and then invading here at Stalingrad, and then invading down here. Okay, that's their three-pronged attack, and this is Stalingrad. That's the battle that takes place in 1942 with all the casualties. But it's where Russia really starts to push Germany back and push them back towards not kind of just having their own country and not conquering the Soviet Union. All right. So there's that. Now we've got these are some pictures from the Battle of Stalingrad. Again, major city in Russia. A couple million people live in Stalingrad, and you can see just how wiped out the city is. Buildings are completely destroyed. Um, you know, kind of rubbish everywhere and debris everywhere. Really a brutal war for the people that fought. Okay, so now the Allies are starting to win in the Eastern Front. The Western Front, they're not, but they're starting to win in the Eastern Front because Russia's able to push them back. And so we move to the North African Front, and Italy and Germany start fighting in North Africa because they want those imperial colonies and territories, and they want to take those from Britain and France. So in 1941 and 1942, Germany and Italy are very successful in North Africa, and they're able to gain some of those imperial colonies. But at the end of 1942, there's this battle called the Battle of Alamein, El Alamein, and the Allied powers are able to take control of North Africa. So they're actually able to gain their colonies back from the Germans and the Italians, and this gives them confidence in 1943 to invade Italy. And this is again a huge turning point because Italy is referred to as the soft underbelly, meaning that if they can invade Italy, and conquer Italy, they're right next to Germany, and so they can kind of come in from the bottom and be right next to Germany in order to launch an invasion of Germany. Okay, so the Allies are successful in doing this, and Mussolini resigns. The fascist dictator in Italy resigns, and Italy ultimately surrenders. So the Allied powers now control Italy. Okay, so again, what happens here is France and Italy and Germany and Great Britain are all fighting in this region, this North African region, right? And early, Germany and Italy control it, but eventually the British control this and the French control this area. So Britain and France launched this invasion of Italy. They come up through the Mediterranean and they conquer Italy, and Italy surrenders. All right. So now, if we cut off Italy right there, Germany is much smaller. It's got Poland here, but they don't have the Soviet Union. Okay, right? The Soviet Union was able to push back. They still have France. They don't have Britain, so the German territory has decreased quite a bit. It actually goes to like right here, has decreased quite a bit from what it was early on in the war. Okay, so the Allies are starting to get more victories and be able to push back against the Germans. All right. Um, so, whoa, that's not correct. So, what we're going to do is just a quick review of, hey, what's going on here to hopefully help you out. Like I said, early German successes, but in 1942 and 1943, major Allied victories. So the Allies are taking heavy losses for 3 years, 1939 to 1942, but they eventually are able to get victories. They went on the Eastern Front in Russia and pushed Germany out. The Southern Front, they're able to gain North Africa and gain Italy. But what we need here is a solution for the Western Front. France is still under German control, and so the Allies are like, we gotta figure out a way to get France back, or else Germany is just going to keep trying to expand. Okay, so we're back to the Western Front. Okay, and in 1944, the Allies launched the greatest, or one of the greatest military actions in all of world history called D-Day. And the plan is to land on the beaches of northern France and push inward towards Germany. Okay, because if they can gain France back, then they can consistently push towards Germany and eventually get the Germans to surrender. Okay, so 15 or 150,000 troops are deployed to these beaches and land on the beaches, and about half of those are Americans. And it's the largest water to land invasion in history. Okay, and so this is led by the U.S. really has this idea, and Dwight D. Eisenhower, the future president of the United States, but they need Britain and France's help as well, and they get that, and they all kind of have this collective effort to land on the beaches of Normandy and push into France to eventually push into Germany. Okay, um, it's a very heavy loss for the Allies. About 10,000 people die in that one day, which is insane. Doesn't seem as much compared to Stalingrad with 2 million, but in one day, that's quite a lot. The Allies are able to get a victory at Normandy and at D-Day, and they're finally able to push the Axis powers back. Okay, and they can now push further into France. So this is a huge risk, but it is the major turning point in World War II. Without this, the Allies would not have been able to win. So this again, like I said, a major turning point. Brutal fighting, but the heroism and heroics and bravery of the soldiers at D-Day is second to none in all of world history. And without it, our world could look a lot different today, with possibly a German controlled Europe. Okay, so here's northern France. And here are what are called the beaches of Normandy, as you can see down there, Normandy, France. So they were going to land at these 5 beaches here, and push up against the Germans, and able to push into France. You can see some were led by the U.S., some were led by France or England. I'm sorry, Great Britain, and some were led by Canada. Okay, um, so here's kind of a visual representation of what happens. Everybody is in Great Britain right here, the United States, and everybody included, and they're going to sail across this little sea right here to Normandy and attack the beaches in hopes of getting into France, right? Getting in here to France. If they can push the Allies back in, or the Axis back and gain control of France, then they can push towards Germany. Okay, they have to land in France first at Normandy to push into Germany. Okay, so that's exactly where they land here to push further into Germany, and that will take years, or another year or so. But first, they got to get this victory here. All right. Um, so, as you can see here, these are some pictures from Normandy. You can see people in their in the boats ready to land and to go to shore. As they landed here, you could see the Germans were all up here on the hills, so they had the advantage of looking down, and the Allies had to come straight up the hill. So it was very, very challenging for them. And as these boats, the doors dropped down, they were taking heavy fire and suffering many casualties. And this is the cemetery from Normandy, and you can see just how many grave sites there are for people that showed their bravery and courage and lost their life here at Normandy. You can go and visit Normandy and go to the cliffs and look at the beaches and kind of look at what people saw as they came in. And it's really powerful to go there. I have not been myself, but I would like to. Well, from what I've heard, it's an extremely powerful place to be. So major turning point because the Allies can now push into France and eventually push into Germany. Okay, so after D-Day, like I said, they continue to push the Germans out of France, Belgium, and Luxembourg. And then in December 1944, we really get the last major battle of World War II, which is the Battle of the Bulge. And that this is Germany's last effort to win back territory to the west. They kind of put a last-ditch effort here on controlling some more territory, and it's the largest U.S. battle in history. It's the battle that they send the most troops to. Um, 600,000 Americans were deployed with 80,000 casualties, which is again massive. The heroics of these people and the things they went through are crazy. And the Allies win. They push further into Germany, and this battle ends in like April or March, and eventually this causes Hitler to commit suicide and die. And then Germany ultimately surrenders because of this battle on May 8th, 1945. So at the end of 1944, this is really the last ditch effort, and the Allies win, and it's kind of the last straw for Germany. Okay, so you can see here with the Battle of the Bulge is right here. So after Normandy, they're pushing more into Belgium and pushing more into France, and eventually they'll win right on the edge of Germany here and push farther into Germany and force the Germans to surrender. Okay, these are some pictures from the Battle of the Bulge. It's in December, like I said, so it's really cold. Some more brutal events that the people went through, but it's the end of the war in Europe, which is obviously a good thing. So just to quickly review the the European battles of the war. There were early German and Italian victories, but Russia leads the pushback, followed by when the U.S. finally enters. Germany starts to really get pushed back. So Russia and the United States come to the aid of Britain and France. And help them push back. And the heroics at D-Day are really what kind of allowed this to take place. And the thing to understand about World War II is it's a very new kind of war. There's better technology, there's better guns, there's better planes with radar, there's missiles that can lock on a certain area, and so you just hit a button and they go off. There's better tanks and stuff like that. So it's really a much more brutal war with little trench fighting. World War I was all about sitting in trenches and fighting. This is more of your constant taking over cities and bombing cities. And I hope you see from the pictures all of the debris that took place. And there's multiple fronts. There's fighting in multiple places at one time. And there's really millions and millions of people deployed, much more than World War I. And so the heroics of the people that fought to be able to go through the things that they did and get a victory is really something that's huge for world history. Okay. Our next video we'll talk about the Pacific battles, but for now that's it for European. Thanks, and let me know if you got questions.